and welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute privilege to be joined by the fabulous Dr. Marissa Alert. Dr. Marissa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here today.
Oh, I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this for ages. But before we can get stuck in, as I know we can so quickly, let me just share a little bit more with the people listening and watching about yourself. So Dr. Marissa Alert is a licensed clinical I can't get my teeth in today. Psychologist, consultant and speaker. She's the driving force behind MDA Wellness, a boutique consulting firm devoted to helping companies address stress and burnout to fuel growth, innovation and retention. Dr. Alert is a recognised thought leader in workplace mental health, and her insights have been featured in Forbes, Newsweek, Yahoo Life, WorkLife and Authority magazine. I mean, what an amazing journey. And it's so important, isn't it, that we get that work-life balance. I remember reading something that in the UK, it was on the UK World Mental Health Organization, that shared that actually if we could address employee mental health, it would put £8.3 billion on the bottom line in the UK alone. I mean, it's amazing. But I mean, what a fabulous journey you've already had. Could you bring that to life a little bit more for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My journey just in terms of workplace wellness just stemmed from the realization that while I really enjoy one-on-one therapy with clients, they always felt like something was missing. And that was, how do I increase the impact that I can make for moving from one-on-one to larger settings? And at the time that I was reflecting on this, a couple of life-changing things happened. The first was COVID-19 pandemic, which really led me to reflect on, one, what's really important? Two, am I showing up, working, and doing the things that I want, that I find fulfilling and meaningful and impactful? And then the third real question that I had to ask myself was, what needs to change? And so in the middle of the pandemic, as I'm reflecting on these questions, the one that stood out was what needed to change. Because at that point, on May 20th, 2020, I experienced something that I hadn't before. And that was, my cousin had called me. She is like a sister to me. And she's like, something seems off about you. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And she's like, not buying it at all. And she's like, nope, I know something is definitely off. And I just remember, we're on FaceTime. I remember just like putting my hand to my face, just trying to cover the fact that my mouth started to quiver. And I got this lump in my throat, and I'm trying to force out, like, I'm okay, I'm fine. And it's not coming out. The only thing that came out was just tears. And she's like, what's going on? And that was the moment I realized that I had literally been trying to fake it until I made it. Right. And I, for the past 6 months, was working on a project as an associate director of product development, creating digital mental health products. And that I had been burning the midnight oil. I had engaged in optimism bias, feeling as though there are so many things that I can do to not take care of myself. And even if I did do them, I'd be okay. So my sleep was horrible. I wasn't taking time out for myself just to rest and recover. It was constantly go, 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 and saying yes to everything. And when my cousin asked that question, it just hit me that, what am I really doing? Here I am, someone who's trying to show up and create impact, but how can I do so when my capacity has been so diminished by my inability to take care of myself? And by pausing to reflect on that, it made me consider, okay, how do I actually change this? Because if my values are impact and integrity and freedom and creating and helping to sustain change, what do I need to be doing differently? Right? And that turning point moment was so critical because I wasn't just tired, I was disconnected from myself, from joy, and more importantly, from meaning.
Yeah. I mean, what what a journey. And so much of that resonates. It made me smile when you said to your cousin that you were fine, because I always say to everybody who knows me, so if I ever say I'm fine, I mean I'm fed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm as far from fine as I possibly know how to be.
100%.
But I know that you won't ask any more questions, because it's the universal get out of jail, isn't it? It's like, I'm fine. And therefore, the other person can go, all good then. But when somebody does take a moment to ask us a question, then that can crack through the very thin veneer that fine was trying to hold together, can't it? And I love that, kind of the question that your cousin asked, because it clearly helped you reconnect with the bit that was disconnected. And that going inward, I always find that quite fascinating, because I know for myself, often that's where my greatest breakthroughs come from, when I finally stop pretending that everything's okay, and I go in and start asking the questions I've been avoiding. Does that resonate?
100%. And it resonates so much, because for me, the breakdown became a breakthrough when I finally listened to what my exhaustion was trying to tell me. Right. And so that experience shaped everything that I do right now, right, at MDA Wellness, where I'm focused on helping teams and leaders to build sustainable performance in environments, right? Not hustle culture and not toxic resilience, but real, easy to implement, research-based ways to support not just themselves, but their employees as well. Because until I made that shift, until I got really intentional, and I know that's something that you're big on as well, right? Just being really intentional in terms of how I take care of myself, right? Bridging that gap between awareness and doing, because I think oftentimes we know or have a general sense of what we should be doing, of how we should be showing up, how we should be performing, how we should be taking care of ourselves. But more often than not, we really fail to follow through and translate that awareness into action. And for me, that was something that I had to get serious about was, okay, you know all about stress management, you're a psychologist, you talk to people about it all the time, but what does it look like for you to take care of yourself and manage stress on a daily basis?
Because you've got to take your own medicine, haven't you? If we're out there, we're telling other people that, like, this is the things that we should be doing, and we should address that. Actually, our stress comes from us as a person, as well as us as a professional, and it impacts it in all of those stages. And actually, it can be hard to take our own medicine, can't it? I sometimes find myself giving clients advice and going, "Good advice, Kim. You're not doing that." You're probably doing that yourself. You don't want to take a spoonful of that. So could you share with us your approach to how do you manage that stress professionally and personally?
Yeah. When I mentioned, just being intentional about my own stress management, for me, it starts with a mindset shift. Right. And I think I had gotten so used to treating stress like a fire alarm, right? Only responding once it's loud and just impossible to ignore. But by then, I'm sure the damage is already done. And so for me, intentional looks like, what do I need to create on a daily basis or do on a daily basis to ensure that I'm taking care of myself? And the biggest thing for me is intentionally carving out time for rest and recovery. Because if I am doing work that I am passionate about and that I love, I can keep going and going and going and going. And so for me, it literally looks like scheduling time to take 5 minutes to breathe, or go to a living room and look out the window. My calendar looks ridiculous. Like, what are these little reminders in here? But so it's some days it's just looking out the window. I'm in Boston and it's cold, and sometimes I don't want to go outside, but how can I expose myself to nature? It looks like scheduling time to connect with friends. It looks like scheduling time to be active. And so for me, scheduling is a huge part of that, because I know that if it's in my calendar, I'm going to do it. If it's not, then it's not going to happen.
I love that. One of my good friends, she calls it her pink time, and she ensures she's got pink time. She colors it pink in her calendar as well. Pink time is scheduled in her calendar throughout every day, and they're the moments that fill up her cup with joy. And she shared it a few years ago, and it really makes a difference, doesn't it? And like you say, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be massive. It can be that whole. I used to be very bad. And unless I'm being really intentional, I can still fall into the days of being where I go, oh yeah, but I could just do that first. I could just squeeze that bit in. I could just do this little bit. And then the amount of times I go charging out to do the school run and realize I've not drank anything all day, I've not eaten anything all day, and I've not actually moved from my desk because I crammed in all of these minute things. And now I'm off to do the mum bit. And therefore you've got to be in it at those parts. And you're like, you've only got yourself to blame. You were the one in charge of your day, right? And you're a grown adult. So I find myself saying this all the time. I'm a grown adult. I know how to make better choices. But actually, to your point, if I schedule them in, it's a bit harder because, I can hit snooze a few times, but once I've done it 4, you're kind of like, it's a bit awkward now. I'm either going to do it or I have to take out the calendar and stop pretending to myself I'm going to do it because I clearly didn't intend to take that action. But what I'd love to find out about, because obviously I used to lead big organizations, now help people with this. What can you do to kind of like help companies and leaders solve that problem? Because very often they've not solved it for themselves. So they find it even harder, don't they, to be able to acknowledge, recognize, and improve it for the people around them.
Yeah. I think what you're touching on is so critical, right? And that, I think, is the awareness piece. And when I reflect on the work that I've done with organizations about like why this can be such a challenging thing for them to solve, the first thing that comes to mind is, what I call the visibility paradox, right? And so organizations can only address what they can see and measure, right? But burnout often operates largely beneath the surface, right? The symptoms show up as missed deadlines or irritability or turnover or conflict amongst teams or not being able to achieve, the metrics that they set out to achieve, right? And so those are often what I call hidden or the invisible workload, right? The psychological tax of hyper responsiveness and unspoken expectations. And I think a helpful way to view it is like an iceberg, right? Companies keep treating the 10% that's visible above water, right? The performance issues, the absenteeism, without addressing the 90% lurking beneath, right? The systemic issues driving exhaustion. And another thing that's a huge issue is that we keep trying to treat burnout like an individual problem when it's really a systemic one, right? It's so easy for us to turn to, the meditation apps and the stress management webinars, right? And how to build resilience, right? And not actually deal with the real stressors, right? Unrealistic deadlines, back-to-back meetings, unclear roles, the whole shebang. And it's not like these approaches are bad, but they're not getting to the root of the problem, right? It's like giving someone an umbrella in a hurricane. It's like, sure, it helps a little, right? But they're still getting drenched. And so it's really important to focus on not just trying to fix people, but to start fixing the systems and understanding what are the things that are driving burnout, right? And to do so, you have to be able to measure it, right? How do we bring awareness to this problem? How do we measure it, right? Surveys, focus groups, feedback.
I love that because very often we're inadvertently creating more of it by, as the leader, trying to be the one that's the most resilient, trying to be the one that can take on even more. It demonstrates another unrealistic expectation for others because people assume you expect them to do the same. So then you send a message at 2 a.m, they reply at 2 a.m. You're like, no. I just wanted it out of my head, so that I didn't have to. I knew I didn't have to wake up in the morning and worry that I'd not done those elements of it. But there's lots of things like that we do every day that create that ripple, don't they, of that toxic culture of it's not what we're intending to create, but because of the systems and the process and the way that we are showing up in it, we're exasperating it, aren't we?
100%. And so I, at both an individual and organizational level, really encourage leaders, especially, to engage in what I like to call like proactive intervention, right? building up the ability to not wait until they're completely exhausted to rest, right? Not waiting until they're completely overwhelmed to set boundaries and to model what that looks like, but ensuring that that's incorporating into their daily, their weekly, their quarterly endeavors by design, not by accident, right? And so therein again lies that intentional approach. If I want to ensure that my team isn't burning out, how do I build up the awareness in myself to ensure that how I'm showing up as a leader, how I'm operating, the policies I'm supporting and implementing aren't working completely against the culture and the type of organization I'm trying to build.
I love that, because they've all got to make sense, haven't they? They've all got to fit together. Because if we're, I always used to use the dreadful phrase, if your hips and lips don't match, if what you're saying and what you're doing aren't aligned, then we've got a problem. It's not going to end the way you expected it to end, because people will be confused. They'll either follow what you said or they'll follow what you were doing. And therefore you're going to end in that challenge. And and you touched on it earlier, one of the things that I see a lot in organizations is lack of clarity. So there's no real clarity on where you're going and why you're going. And also, we're not very good often at giving our people permission to be part of the solution. And so instead, we give them, well, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and we wonder why. We only get what we always got, because we're no longer curious to what else could happen. We're not curious to, is there a different way? I used to say my job as a leader was to say, we're going to Edinburgh, but actually as a team, we need to work out how we're going to get there. So we know where we're going, but how we're going to get there is up to all of us. So we could go by plane, we could go by train, we could walk, it takes us a long time. We could go on a bike, doesn't matter. And when one of those doesn't work, what we can have a contingency. But actually, we'll get there a lot faster if we do it together, because then we'll stop doing the silly steps that actually aren't needed, don't add any value, but actually do toxicity. I really should put my teeth in today. Marissa, that's twice. But is there something you see in the organizations that you're working with?
Yeah, as you were sharing, the example you gave about how do we figure out as a team how to get there. One of the most powerful shifts that I've seen companies make is starting, like you said, to incorporate decisions, right, into meetings and bring in the entire team in. And I remember a specific company that I worked with that focused their meetings or started their meetings on Friday by asking a simple question, which was, what can we take off of our plate next week, right? And they call it their let go list. And over time, their company started to change its culture because people felt more in control, like you alluded to, right? They felt less decision fatigue, they experienced more clarity, and they felt like they had more permission to hit the pause button and to surface concerns as to, like, you just said that we needed to prioritize this, but we also have this, and this going on. So what do we need to remove next week in order to get this done? And just creating that space for team members to be able to have input and feel safe doing so just created such a shift that not just led to an increase in psychological safety, but they felt more camaraderie as a team, right? They felt more open sharing. And I think this just goes to show that sometimes it doesn't really require huge shifts, but if you understand what the important buttons are to press to drive change, it can be really transformational.
I love that. So often it's the seemingly little thing that has the big impact, isn't it? We used to call it the do, delegate and dump list. So what do I need to do? Because actually it fills me, either I'm the only one who can do it or it fills me with joy. What can I delegate, even if I can't delegate it today, but it's on my list. And what can I dump? Because actually just don't need to do it anymore, because we don't tend to let go, do we? We carry on. I made a career, Dr. Marissa, before I moved into doing what I do now. I made a career out of what I used to call asking the dumb girl questions. So I'd go into organizations and I'd go to the front line and say, can you tell me what's the daftest thing we ask you to do every day? What do you have to do every day that you're like, they must be crazy making us do this? They tell you, and I'd be like, okay, so either it needed doing and nobody's told you why, so I can tell you why and you'll think we're less crazy. Or actually it doesn't need doing and nobody knows you're actually doing it, so please stop. It's like, as we don't want you to be doing that. And here's hours back of your time that we can now invest in doing something else. But we're so busy not asking those questions because leaders, we want to appear like we know all the answers. So if I go and ask a question like that, I'm clearly letting you know I don't know what the daftest thing is that you do. And that might make me feel a bit more vulnerable. But it's like, but that's usually where the gold is. You know, where people are doing things that you're like, really? You think we want you to do that? Okay. And because people do it from the best intention, they're not doing it. They're doing it because somebody somewhere told them that this is, this is really important. So I love that intentionality around saying, actually, there are things that we can just let go. There are things that we can say, they might have worked for us till now, but we no longer need them. And therefore we don't have to, we have to keep adding new things into the bag. We can take some things out of the bag to create space, can't we, for us to move forward and grow healthily.
So true. And I love the point that you made about, as leaders, being okay with not knowing everything or being so worried about coming off as if, hey, I'm the leader, but I have to ask you this seemingly simple question. What does that say about me? And instead considering the flip side of the fact that I'm coming to you as a leader and I'm asking you the simple question, like, could that potentially show that I value your input and that perhaps I don't have all the answers? And there's something that you can contribute, right, to the organization, to my understanding, that could be very impactful. And so, again, just that self-awareness of not just, okay, what does it show or what does it say about me, but what am I also communicating to those around me about my willingness to seek help? And what am I modeling from that behavior?
Oh, that's so true. Because I think once we do invite people in and as I said earlier, give them permission to be part of the solution. So here's the problem we're solving, but actually we can solve it together. I don't need to have all of the answers. It reminds me of something I read about Henry Ford. And he once sued a newspaper for slander because they had written that he was an uneducated buffoon, basically. And when they went to court, their lawyers went through a series of questions, asking him really intellectual questions designed to prove that he didn't know the answers and therefore he was an uneducated buffoon and they couldn't possibly therefore be slander. And after one particularly impertinent question, he turned around and he said, can I just say, in my office, on my desk, there is this big electronic box. And at the push of a button, any one of those buttons, I can summon to me someone who can answer any question that anybody possibly poses to me. So why would I need to know the answers myself? And everybody realized in that moment that actually that's not the answer of an uneducated man. That's an answer of an educated man, because he didn't need to know it all. He just needed to know who to ask. And I think for me, that's kind of where we need to evolve to as leaders, isn't it? Is that gaining our confidence on the fact that we need to ask the right questions and we need to know who to be able to ask. But by doing that, by stepping intentionally into that space, we actually create other people's opportunity to be valued, to be heard, and to have their cup filled rather than their cup depleted.
Love that. Yeah.
I love all of this stuff. There's so many fascinating things, and you've already shared so many, but time's like flies on these shows. I'm like, get here, how to get to these parts. I love that. One of the things that's been quite clear from what you've shared is actually a large part of this is that awareness. It's that self-reflection. It's that leading self first to be able to lead others. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think oftentimes when we are disconnected from who we are and how we are, and we're making decisions from this place where we lack true understanding of ourselves, we're showing up in a disconnected place and actually showing up as someone else.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not making it from a place of awareness, like who's making this decision? Am I showing up from a place of reactivity, right? Or am I truly showing up as myself? And an example of this is just, coming back to my own journey with burnout is when I wasn't pausing to reflect on and connect with my own values and what's really important to me. Everything that I was doing was as if it was someone who didn't hold these values.
Yeah.
And a value of mine is freedom and integrity and impact. And so when I'm showing up from this place, not realizing that in this state of chronic stress and I'm, teetering on burnout, I'm not living aligned with my values. And so when I'm showing up raggedy and not as my full true self, who's really showing up? And am I making decisions and am I creating impact? No, because I'm so disconnected from who I really am. Now, of course, I'm the same person, right?
Yeah.
I'm the one making these decisions. But when I reflect on who does Marissa want to be? How does she want to show up in these moments? How is she creating impact? How is she being true to herself and connecting and living aligned with her values? And in the moments that I'm not, I realize that the work that I'm aiming to do, the impact is so much more diminished because of that disconnect. And so having that awareness, right, of, okay, as a leader, as an individual contributor, this is how I should be contributing. This is how I should be leading. And if I can recognize the disconnect between this is how I want to be and this is how I actually am, it's going to be really difficult to take steps to bridge that gap, right? To create that connection where there's disconnect. And it's not as if things can't keep happening or work can't continue to be done, but I just find that it's so much more draining because I'm not showing up how I want to be. And it takes so much more effort to keep showing up as someone else, as something else.
Well, I think that so resonates. I think as well, I spend so much time being frustrated with myself that I wasn't living my values, and I think we've got very, very similar ones. But for me, kindness is one of them, and it took me a long time to realize kindness meant to self as much as others. For 2 years, kindness meant to everybody else. So even if I was burnt, I'd be like, oh yeah, but you could be kinder to that person, and then realize the only person I wasn't kind to was me. So there was no kindness in there, and that therefore is really you can't carry on in that space. You're going to have to come back for it. Dr. Marissa, it's been a joy. I can't believe where time's gone. Could I ask you, if you had to go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I love that question. There's a lot, but the one I want to focus on is, and I think people say this a lot, but for me, it just rings true so much. So growing up, I was always like pretty shy at times and very introverted. And I felt like I had to put on a different mask or outfit, so to speak, depending on where I showed up, because there was a part of me that didn't want to embrace my weirdness and the fact that I can be a little quirky. And before I can even enter a room, I would anticipate how, if I showed up in this authentic way, I would be received. And so the advice I would give to myself is that show up fully, authentically as who you are in every space. And there are going to be people who will gravitate to that, who will connect with that, who will be inspired by that, who will love that. And of course, there are going to be people who aren't. But at the end of the day, if I, again, keep showing up as this version of myself that I think other people want to see, then I'm not only allowing this fake version of myself to be in the room, but I'm also robbing myself of the opportunity to connect with people who would want to connect with the true version of me. And I think there are probably a lot of relationships and opportunities that I missed out on because I was trying to fake it till I make it. I was trying to show up as this woman that I felt other people wanted to see.
Oh, I love that. It's such great advice. And I think I was similar. I was brought up to appear in a certain way, and then I went to corporate and tried to be what I thought they wanted me to be. And then I read a quote somewhere that was, which I love. It was, you've got to learn to embrace your inner weirdness and let your soul shine. And actually, we're all of us have got an inner weirdo. And each of us is different than anybody else's, but do you know what? That's our shine. And I think I love that is your advice. Before you go, Dr. Marissa, could you share with us who is it you help and how do people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So in terms of the work I do with corporations, I primarily focus on supporting fast-paced organizations to help them identify the systemic patterns that drive burnout and implement evidence-based interventions that transform well-being. And on the clinical side, I work with high-achieving professionals to help them manage stress, anxiety, insomnia, depression. And a huge part of that work isn't just about coping, it's really about creating systems, right, at work and in life that make well-being, rest, success, and fulfillment possible. Because we know that, every athlete recognizes that recovery isn't optional, right? And so every professional should know the same, right? And unless we recognize this, we'll keep normalizing exhaustion at the price of ambition and well-being.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. Sometimes with these things, we feel like they're counterintuitive, and actually they're not. One doesn't exist without the other. You can't have an up without a down. You can't have performance without rest. They have to go hand in hand. You shared such amazing insight. For ways to get in touch with Dr. Marissa, if you weren't able to write anything down, look at the show notes below. All of the ways to connect with her are there. And Dr. Marissa, thank you so very much for coming on and being such a fabulous guest.
Thank you so much, Kim. Really, really appreciate this opportunity. And it was such a delight conversing with you today.
It was for me as well. And for everybody listening and watching, I hope you found today to be as inspiring, impactful, and intention setting as I have. And until next time, take care.